What is the dumbest thing your school or workplace enforced? My school has one-way corridors, so like in theory, they make sense since the corridor in question houses a lot of classrooms and is often full of people. But we're so insistent on it that they had some posted there just to tell confused middle schoolers that they have to take a long, inefficient route to go to a classroom in the perpendicular hallway. They went so far that they blocked the fire exit in some classrooms because they could be used as a passageway. Also, the deal they made with the cafeteria supplier claimed that the cafeteria can't have any competition, so you couldn't bring lunch boxes or even have anything salty at a bake sale. Hold up, isn't blocking a fire exit either illegal or in violation of like some kind of building code or regulatory code? Story 2. My company tried, unsuccessfully, to prohibit getting a jump if your car's battery went out or changing a flat tire on company property. The company wanted us to use our insurance to get our car jumped or a tire changed. All because one person connected the cords wrong a decade or so ago. So yeah, I feel like waiting around another hour or so after a 12-hour midnight shift. They had to retract it when employees followed the rules but stayed punched in, collecting OT. Story 3. There were so many dumb ones in school, like getting detention when you didn't bring a hat for sport days. But the one that boggled my mind is that anyone being bullied or attacked by another student must not, under any circumstances, fight back or hurt the student attacking you in any way. Otherwise, quote, you are just as guilty. Instead, you are supposed to shout for help and wait for a teacher to come. The stupidest thing I have ever heard. It was meant to teach us that violence is never the answer and that an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Like, yeah, okay, cool, teaching kids to never defend themselves is the way to go. Story 4. I went to a private school with a strict dress code and we had a merit point system. If we had perfect behavior, never took a bathroom break, never talked in class, never had a uniform violation, I never once upset a teacher in any way whatsoever the entire semester, we got enough points to cash in to wear jeans for a single day instead of our uniform khakis. Some kids were on their best behavior all semester to get that one jean day. I just said screw it and wore jeans whenever I wanted and went to the bathroom whenever I wanted. I ended up in the negatives for merit points, but I ended up having like 10 jean days a semester, and I also got to whiz freely whenever I needed to. I was a rebel. Story 5. I attended a Christian middle school that banned a couple of things. Harry Potter, banned for the encouragement of witchcraft. Bringing in books or movie items would get you into deep crap. Hugs, we were allowed to Christian side hug, which was basically a side hug. Direct hugs with 2 hands weren't allowed because of too much physical contact. Oh yeah, only hugs with the same gender too. Hanging out near windows during cold days, this was banned from my class specifically. Before it was enacted, someone drew an extremely large Johnson on the fogged up windows. This happened twice. We were individually interrogated, but no one fessed up. So my teacher forced everyone to sit on the side farthest to the windows whenever it was a cold or rainy day and the windows fogged up. For some reason, my school took this very seriously, and my class had to go to confession in addition to receiving a very harsh lecture. Now that I'm older, these things are always brought up in my 8th grade reunions for a good laugh, and to this day, the identity of the Johnson drawing bandit remains a mystery. I know it was you, Amanda. God dang it, you got all the boys in trouble. Story 6. In my days, the school was as liberal as they come, but now my little sis goes to that same school, and there's a rule against saying words like gay, homosexual, etc. They discourage mostly all contact between the genders, especially on social media, as if talking to each other is going to lead to intimacy, though it's probably healthy when her stupid teacher says sarcastic crap to students like, go have babies of your own. I kid you not, that sentence was provoked by a simple fact that a guy and a girl talk to each other frequently on WhatsApp. Story 7. I used to work at a site which stored a lot of government files in 6 different warehouses and was part of a team that would go around the warehouses to collect different files and bring them back to the main office so they could be sent out together. As this was a government site, they used to have bomb drills along with fire drills, and we were expected to stand in the middle of whichever building we were in, as the bomb might be near a door, and exiting the building could set it off. One guy in our team asked what we were supposed to do if we were in between buildings when the bomb alarm went off, and was told that we had to enter the nearest building and stand with the rest of the workers in there. Story 8. I worked on a contract at a major Puget Sound aircraft manufacturer. The company had become enamored of a Japanese workplace management system called 5S, which the Japanese had implemented for manufacturing facilities. Things like keeping every tool in a designated spot when not in use, the workers all swept the floors and kept the facility clean, that sort of thing. The only problem was the management at this large aircraft manufacturer felt that everything should fit every environment. One size fits all. If the shop floor is doing it, then so must the software department and so on. So all of us engineering types had to create a desk layout using tape to indicate where our staplers and pens and so on were to be placed. And we all had a schedule for who was supposed to clean the kitchen area and the floor every few weeks. So every few weeks, when my name came up on the rotation, they paid me $50 an hour, more like $100 an hour, to the contract agency to clean the microwave and refrigerator, vacuum the floor, and so on. We were probably the highest paid janitors around, at least outside the government. Story 9. Many years ago, the director of sales noticed that people were clocking in at exactly 9 a.m. and then turning on their computers on logging in. Thanks to the slow computers we use and the crappy customized business software we can't seem to get away from, this took quite a bit of time. Sometimes it would be as much as 10 minutes before a salesperson was able to work. And at least for the people who took inbound calls, this meant that you could have customers on hold for 10 minutes. And the kind of customer who was so itchy to talk to us that they dial in precisely at 9 o'clock is most displeased about having to wait till 9:10 to talk to someone. And so the director of sales decided that anyone in the sales division can, if they like, clock in up to 15 minutes before your shift and get time and a half, so 20.5 minutes of pay for it. Result, great success. Enough people showed up at 8:45 and then logged into their machine so that you could call at 9 o'clock in 1 second and speak to a real live human instead of the call queue. The director of sales noticed another problem. People were reluctant to take a phone call too close to the end of their shift because it was a massive pain in the butt to get approved for working after shift, and because the metrics punished anyone who didn't end their calls at shift end precisely, and so people would rush their customers off the phone or just let their phones ring at shift end. And so the director of sales decided that anyone in the sales division can, if they like, clock up to 15 minutes after shift ends and be paid time and a half for it. Result, great success. The amount of customers complaining about being rushed off the phone and the number of no answer by agent incidents dropped to near zero. Around the same time, though, the director of HR decided to switch to new payroll software. And for some reason, this software necessitated new punch clocks be installed, which took much longer to verify a punch in than the older clocks. The vendor promised that punch in would take 15 to 20 seconds. Even if that had been true, it isn't. I stood there timing it. It takes 30 to 45 seconds. And some agents with badly differentiated fingerprint whorls take up to a solid minute to verify. We now have 150 agents attempting to log in at once at this particular site, and HR decided that 5 clocks is sufficient. But the director of HR loved this software because it allowed him to put together these awesome charts and things. And one of the charts he put together was, look at how much overtime the sales division eats up. The greedy bastards, what are we going to do about this? Lots of agents were showing up 15 minutes early 5 days a week and leaving 15 minutes late 5 days a week and getting paid 2.5 hours of overtime each and every single week. He took these findings to the COO, who was similarly appalled. And so the chief operating officer and the director of HR and the director of sales sat in a room and fought about it. And eventually the COO decided that they were going to cut it down to paying 7 minutes of time and a half before shift and no time at all after shift. Results? Freaking chaos. Many agents started showing up exactly at shift start and fighting for the punch clocks and then fighting to turn their computers on. Some departments wouldn't get a single available agent until 9:30 or later. And of course, customers started getting rushed off the phones, and everyone refused to answer a ringing phone for 10 minutes or so to shift change. And of course, morale went in the toilet. Idiots. Shortly after, I got promoted to manager. One of my first acts was to tell my team not to punch in at all and that I would enter them manually into the time clock system. The director of HR was most unhappy, but screw that guy. I worked for the director of sales, and he was gratified to see my entire team clocked in and ready to go at shift start every day. As for the COO, his idiotic decisions caught up with him, and he has since been demoted to, essentially, glorified warehouse manager. Story 10. At one college I attended, 2 college students, one male and one female, got intoxicated and had intimacy on campus. Neither can consent, yet even if both parties were intoxicated and wanted to have intimacy, the female can change her mind the next day, week, month, year, and have him brought up on charges with the college judicial board. There were also posters across campus saying that if you were on substances or alcohol, but you went to the judicial board first to make a complaint, you'd get immunity as long as you felt you were the victim. Essentially, a female student on substances could spike and have intimacy with another student on campus, but as long as she said she felt victimized and admitted she had been on substances, she'd get complete immunity and anonymity, and then the judicial board would still go through with a hearing. Story 11. From Singapore, in my primary school, girls weren't allowed to have their hair length more than an inch below the ears unless they were enrolled in either the Chinese dance or ballet co-curricular activities. I kid you not, if you were in either of these CCAs, you'd literally be given a 1-year hair pass to be kept on you at all times. Students whose hair violated the rules would be sent to the barber station on campus to get their hair cut for $10. I freaking hated having mushroom hair. Story 12. My middle school had points. So, basically, if you got in trouble, you got a certain amount of points in your agenda. After reaching certain milestones, you would get punishments, i.e., 5 points gives you an hour detention, 10 gives you 2 hours detention, 15 gives Saturday school, etc. That sounds all well and good, and there is a big but, every week you would have to get your agenda signed by your parents so that they knew what you had been up to and if you had gotten in trouble. If you did not get the agenda signed, it was an automatic 5 points, even if you had no points to begin with. That is an automatic detention for not showing your parents that you had been perfectly good all week. There are several inherent problems here. 1, the good kids were getting detentions for no reason because we were still children and would forget. And 2, the bad kids didn't care to show parents and didn't care to get detentions because they are bad kids. And 3, points were based on what individual teachers felt was bad behavior. For example, my friend got a point from our English teacher for twiddling his thumbs after he got done with his test because we weren't allowed to read after we were done and waiting for others. So man, points were stupid. Story 13. In a call center, listing off a list of mandatory criteria and a specific order of discussion during a sales call, but also telling you to make it personal and excite the customer. Also, not to pressure a customer, but to attempt a close at least 3 times. It forced good, honest sales reps to change their own unique ways of selling, and along with 100% call recording, used to ensure calls stuck to the correct method, was used to catch people out for not trying hard enough, not being pushy, or not following the brand, not using your initiative to match the call's path to the customer you're dealing with. This increased sales slightly, but lowered morale massively. Story 14. I worked at a Christian college. Besides the extreme stuff like gay conversion or general exorcisms, there were hundreds of little stupid rules. Students and teachers had their social media monitored, so if I was on Facebook, I had to do consequences, which meant 10 hours of pulling out thorn bushes on the farm. We had internet for 2 hours a day, and only if one of the higher-ups were around. Guys had to be at least 40 centimeters away from a girl at all times. I was gay, so if I looked at a guy or girl for too long, I was in trouble. No gum, no lunch boxes or water bottles. A close friend of mine shot himself because they were so controlling over him, as he was one of the musicians, so they were even more strict. I left after that. I hear they've been accused of several human rights violations since I left. My heart is still heavy when I think of anyone who was still there. Story 15. My high school's administrators, or admins, in 1994 through 1997 were petrified of this quote-unquote new thing called moshing. They thought kids would mosh to anything with a beat. The unofficial school band, an 80s punk band called the Degenerates, with Rat Fink as their mascot, never played any school events. The administrators made sure every dance and prom had the same band, the Fire Dogs with a W. Right now, the Fire Dogs are a bunch of local firefighters who play light 70s rock. In the 90s, the name was used by a group of retired volunteer firefighters in their 70s and 80s who played big band music, Glenn Miller, Tom Dorsey, etc. And I don't know if this was mandated by the school administrators or what, they only played slow songs, String of Pearls, etc., and played them at around half tempo. The musicians weren't very good either. Nobody moshed, sure, but dances were typically empty, and only around 15 couples went to prom. You couldn't even slow dance to it. Story 16. At my current job, bosses don't hire more people even though we are atrociously understaffed. Bosses, you guys need to stop getting overtime. That costs us thousands. Back in high school, I actually got charged with making a quote-unquote threat, a serious one, all because of a misunderstanding. A teacher who didn't like me overheard me joking with one of my best friends and completely took it the wrong way. We were talking about a video game, something like Gears of War or World of Warcraft, and I said something that sounded bad out of context. The school treated it like a real incident, and I even had to go to court over it. I have so many more ridiculous ones. Story 17. A beloved principal at my elementary school passed away, and the woman brought in to replace her was strict. She was determined to straighten things out and bring her form of discipline to the school. I don't think she liked children all that much. The first thing she did was eliminate Friday story times. Our former principal would come in and read to the students. He gave us all a break and really endeared her to the students. No more. Then she took away field days, claiming it promoted injuries. Then she took away recess and replaced it with quiet time in the classroom. The worst part and weirdest was the whisper rule during lunchtime. If you could feel your voice vibrating in your throat when you talked, you were speaking too loud. We were required to keep our fingers on our throats while we ate. Thankfully, that rule was overturned after about a week, but yeesh. Story 18. Our high school was a branch of a private educational company which encompassed schools on all levels of education from kindergarten to university. The university was located in the building next door, and they had a really good restaurant in there, so we all used to go in there on lunch break until a new director was appointed at our high school. He announced we were no longer allowed to go lunch there without supervision of a teacher. This directive was later stricter, so that we were not allowed to leave the building at all, and in the end, it was forbidden to leave the floor our classroom was on. Naturally, we began a protest and signed petitions. The director then came to our class to explain what was going on and had a rant. What if you go out and get run over by a car or fall from the stairs or damage yourself using an elevator? What if you're mugged, attacked? I won't risk going to jail because of you. I like my life too much for that. I won't get arrested because you will hurt yourself, break a leg or something, and then sue me in the court. There's no way that is happening. We ignored the rules, so they started enforcing a record in the book system whereby the names of those who broke the rules would be written into a diary book, and more than 10 records meant being expelled from the school. The teachers soon realized how ridiculous it was, so after a while they stopped writing our names in. The director was pleased with how efficiently his policies are enforced and how obedient and tame the students are. Story 19. My boarding school had a policy in which students that had any issues with drinking, smoking, substances, etc. could receive proper medical help to quit if they were fixated or scared of being caught. The issue with this was that if you opted to go through this program, the school would tell your parents, ruining the whole point of the system in the first place. They also used to carry out regular tests on us on the basis of them being illegal, obviously, but refused to test teachers who used to be bigger smokers than most of us. Story 20. Boy, do I have a few. I'm from Sri Lanka, and my school is an extremist when it comes to relationships. You could get suspended for merely being in a relationship. At one point, they introduced a rule which dictated that a boy and a girl cannot be closer than 12 inches to each other. Facepalm. Any contact other than handshakes was either discouraged or punished. I remember at one point during a concert, there was a dance item featuring a boy and a girl, a salsa, if I remember correctly. But since they couldn't hold each other's hands, the teacher in charge decided to tie a ribbon on each of the girls' hands with enough length of the ribbon for the boy to hold on to. One of the most cringe-worthy moments of my school life, since you could hear the entire audience trying to muffle their laughter. Once, I even got a warning for sharing an ice cream with a girl. Basically, if you were seen regularly talking to the same person of the opposite gender, you'd be blacklisted and then be put on watch. Equally messed up was that having a social media account of any type, mainly Facebook, could get you suspended. They couldn't really enforce this because then 80% of the senior students would have to be suspended. Other than that, there was the rule which said we couldn't eat from any outside establishments if we were in uniform unless accompanied by an adult. Any books that weren't school-related would be confiscated among a host of other things like CDs, music players, flash drives, basically anything technological. Icing on the cake, any sort of board or card-related game would get confiscated on site, everything ranging from Pokemon to chess. Ironic because there was one time a guy in the school chess team who got his set confiscated by a rookie teacher. What makes all this so much better is the fact that the son of the school founder, also a past pupil who got a job as a deputy principal, who is in his mid to late 20s, was in a relationship with a girl from 9th grade, which would put her at about 13 to 14 years, while the school did absolutely nothing about it. Neither did his parents, as far as I know, and this didn't happen just once either. And if any of these stories are getting to YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 21. I worked at a convenience store nights to pay for college. The general manager was convinced that we were losing money on the donuts we had brought in by a local bakery and the hot dogs that were cooked on the roller grill. To combat the crippling financial losses, they had us put all the leftover donuts and hot dogs in a trash bag and put it in the walk-in cooler behind the drinks. But they never even looked at them. So for about 2 months of doing this, we had 2 50-gallon trash bags full of old hot dogs and donuts just sitting there making sweet, mildewy love. Story 22. Mandatory cultural events. For those unfamiliar, it's a program a lot of colleges do to keep students abreast of various cultures, events, and other things. Some of them can be fun. My college actually got Lindsey Sterling 2 years ago. The ridiculous part was that you had to attend 20 or so of these events before you graduated. Now, this doesn't sound too terrible if you came in as a freshman, but for transfer students with only 1 or 2 years to go, we still had to go to 18 of them. Some students had off-campus jobs, meetings, clubs, night classes, etc., so it wasn't realistic for the school to require so damn many of the things, and if you didn't have all of your cultural events, they'd completely refuse to let you walk. Story 23. At my school, we have a 45-minute period between second block and third block called AEP, where you can basically do whatever, draw, work on homework, whatever. Anyway, we also have a pass system, a blue slip of paper with about 40 lines to write date, destination, time, and teacher signature. One day, I wanted to go to the library across the school, so I got my pass signed and walked all the way down there. I was then told once there that I needed to get a specific pass only meant for AEP library time from my teacher, and that I would have to walk all the way back and get that. Screw that. Story 24. No quote-unquote jelly babies allowed in your water bottles. I heard this when I was in first grade. No, not the edible type. The jelly babies were also known as water retention marbles, which were basically inedible things that could soak in water, turning into some sort of gelish marble. The reason why I think it was dumb was because of the fact that they had to make a rule for it in the first place. There was also a rule saying that you had to wear a hat purchased from the uniform shop when you were not in the undercover area in elementary school. In retrospect, I don't know any good reason other than we need the money for that rule. The only thing the hats displayed on the outside was your house. Story 25. I went to a relatively newly established high school that had a predominantly Mormon population. They once added signs in the lunch area that said, "No starting parades." My friends and I had put on the music from the movie Hot Rod, the one the Asian guy dances to while passing out flyers, and started shouting "Parade" the day before the signs popped up. We got around 40 students to follow us in a line and we had fun. My friend and I started skateboarding in the quad area one year and naturally they banned all students from skateboarding. We had a large hill made mostly of soft dirt leading up to the quad area, so we decided to start sliding down on pizza boxes that we found to emulate skateboarding. The school administration came over the intercom the same day saying, "Students caught skateboarding on pizza boxes will be suspended." It's not that I really disagreed with the new policies, but I found it absolutely hilarious how specific these new policies were. Story 26. I'm in the Marine Corps, so I can go on all day long about dumb stuff that gets enforced. The first thing that comes to mind is fraternization. You get to your unit, and there are obviously guys there more senior than you. They initiate the heck out of you at first, but after almost a year training and doing a workup for a deployment, you become very close with them. Then you're told, we're a brotherhood on a daily basis. When we deployed, it was 40 plus of us living in a room the size of an average house's basement. For 9 months, you live together, see everybody's body on a daily basis, watch movies together, eat together, and then you get back from deployment. A guy that is your alleged brother, words from the commanding officer, calls you to pick him up from a bar, and you get threatened by the commanding officer that it's fraternization. You know better, and he could take your rank and pay from you. Story 27. My high school wouldn't let kids go out of class after lunch to use the restroom. Their explanation was basically their theory that if it can happen, it will happen, which was we have 50 teachers at any given time. If 2 students left every class at the same time, we would have 100 students in the halls also. Why didn't you go during lunch? You were also expected to hold it in the class before lunch, and you were asked in your beginning class why you didn't go before class, and you were told in your last class that you should hold it until school is out. So basically, we weren't allowed to use a restroom at all. Basically, in a 7-hour time frame with only 30 minutes of lunchtime, you were expected to hold your whiz or poop or be punished accordingly. Like, seriously, if you went enough times, you would be counted as absent and dock points in your classes. It got so bad that students started retaliating by just simply walking out of class and dumping water on the ground and saying, "You can't use this water to clean up the whiz I'm about to make on the ground." One guy got up in the middle of class after being told no, unzipped his pants, grabbed a water bottle, and simulated whizzing on the ground with it. I have no idea what the rules are now, but I think they are a little bit more lenient. Story 28. I worked in a bar for a few years. The latest we can legally serve alcohol is 3:59 a.m. But most nights by 2:30, 3 a.m., there were only a handful of people in the bar. Well, one night I was off and the people working that night decided that since it was so quiet, they'd close the bar at 2 a.m. The owners didn't like this one bit and made a ruling that we were required to stay open until 4 a.m. or we wouldn't get paid. I spent the next few months sitting with my thumb up my butt in an empty bar from 2:30 to 4 a.m. every weekend. Eventually, like all unwritten ridiculous rules, we just kind of stopped following it, but man, was that a bonehead move on their part. Story 29. The no holes in your pants thing. I even have a story for how ridiculous this is. I was going home early due to throwing up and feeling sick and waiting in the office of my high school for my mom to pick me up. My favorite teacher at the time came in and I stopped him to ask a question about an assignment he'd given the class. Then this girl comes in and says, "I got sent down here because there's a hole in my pants," and she points to her knee. The office lady frowned and called the vice principal, who asked if she had gym clothes she could change into. The girl did, so they sent her to the gym locker room to fetch them. A few minutes later, my teacher and I see her walking away from the gym in booty shorts. My teacher stops her and brings her back into the office and asks how that is any better. The vice principal said it was fine since they were gym clothes and the girl was sent back to class. The teacher just gave me a look of, "Oh my god, you think this is stupid too, right?" And I just rolled my eyes. Story 30. Middle school. If you were late 3 times in 1 month without an excuse like a doctor's visit, you had a Saturday detention from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. with your parent. My dad's car broke down once and it took a couple of days to get it fixed. Well, we got Saturday school and he goes to Saturday school with me. Well, my dad doesn't happen to deal well with stupid rules and spends the entire time telling the vice principal off. By 9 a.m., once his coffee ran out, it started to get rude. By 10 a.m., my dad was calling other parents asking them to come hang out with him. Someone brought a 6-pack. The school had no rules against alcohol on campus, which was weird. So my dad laughed and chugged a beer. Dad called more parents, started a party in my 7th grade classroom during detention. I had to call my mom to drive him home since he was too intoxicated to drive us. A few rules changed the next Monday. My dad made sure to have us late 3 more times the next month. and had no idea why he wasn't invited back to the Saturday party. Story 31. In my primary school in England, elementary school for you Americans, they made it so we were not allowed to walk on the grass because apparently it made our shoes muddy and ruined the school carpets. Anyway, in England, we loved to play football and we would always end up playing on the grass. So, one time, 6 of my friends and I got sent to the head teacher, the principal, and we had to write an essay on what we did wrong. I remember them asking how our parents would react when they hear this, and my friend saying, "For walking on the grass, they won't give a crap." We all started laughing when that happened. Still makes me laugh today. Story 32. A former employer allotted every full-time employee with 2 personal days and 2 floating holidays every year, in addition to your accrued vacation time. These were paid days off to use for things like appointments, attending weddings, or other activities, etc. The rules were only 2 people were allowed to take vacation on a given day so as to ensure we had enough people to work at full capacity. In addition to those 2 people being off, 1 extra person could be off if they used a personal day. So theoretically, we could have 3 employees take the same day off, 2 with vacation, 1 with a personal day. Still following? Here's where it gets asinine. If there are 2 people on vacation on a given day and you need that day off, you are allowed to use a personal day, but not a floating holiday or a vacation day. Essentially, my employer's stance was, yes, we can accommodate having 3 employees away from work on a given day, but only if that 3rd employee uses one of his or her personal days. If that employee has only floating days, we cannot accommodate 3 people being away from work. My real-life example was so frustrating, I had to use my 2 personal days to attend a wedding out of town. A couple of months later, my girlfriend needed to have some dental surgery done and she was going to need someone to be there with her to drive her home and help her out for the rest of the day after the surgery. I requested the day off using one of my floating holidays, but it was denied because there were already 2 people using vacation that day. I asked my boss if I could use my vacation or if he could make an exception. Nope, I begged them to see the lack of logic in this arbitrary rule. Nothing. I ended up calling in sick. Forget them. Technicalities and ridiculous rules like that will always irk me. Having rules without logical justification because that's just the way it is. That's the kind of thinking I cannot stand. Story 33. My high school's jerseys were terrible. They were only beneficial when it was slightly cold. As a result, people resorted to buying actual jackets, which kept you warm. My school banned them, saying they looked unprofessional and negatively impacted the reputation of the school. I understand sticking to a school uniform, but forcing students to freeze just to stay in unison is stupid. A lot of people at my school also smoked or did weed at school, pretty much in front of teachers. The problem was that if a teacher tried to do something about it, they had to report the incident to management, and it took a lot of time. The student would just get a slap on the wrist, metaphorically speaking, and no harm would come of it even though it was against the school rules. However, if you got caught littering or eating in the wrong areas, you're on rubbish duty for the next 3 lunchtimes and you have to show the teacher at the end what you collected. Although, if that happened, you just went to a rubbish bin at the end of lunch and filled up a bag. Story 34. So back in grade school when Mega Man Battle Network 4 came out, a lot of people and I started doing net battles. There was this cool new mechanic called a dark chip, which basically gave you a huge power boost at the cost of something to you. So if you used a dark chip, you'd get inverted controls, be unable to use your normal attack or whatever. In net battles, I like to use them because inverted controls or whatever my character was affected with, I figured weren't hard to deal with. Everybody in my class was also kind of odd and liked to roleplay, so when I used dark chips, I'd say something like, "Nothing can defeat the power of the dark," or, something edgy like, "When you master your own darkness, you have no weakness." The principal caught on and banned Mega Man because she thought it was satanic or whatever. Story 35. Not me personally, but some friends I knew during senior year at high school, which was only a year ago, got a teacher to ban making Shrek puns. These friends, notably John and Cindy, not their actual names, had rallied with other kids in their class and took every chance they could to comment on something that happened in class by making bad Shrek jokes. Now, this went on for 2 weeks, and they knew that they were driving the teacher insane. However, one day they took things too far for the teacher. Cindy and the class were making more Shrek jokes than normal when the teacher asked if they could stop. John's response was, "Yeah, guys, I think we're overdoing it." That one remark was a breaking point for the teacher, who immediately banned Shrek jokes in her class. She was serious about the ban too, so serious that when John made another one the next day, she sent him to ISS, in-school suspension. Story 36. All new employees are required to take TOEIC ESL test twice and ESL lessons. 2 of us were native speakers, and another 4 had lived in the Anglosphere long enough to be basically native, or had gone to English language schools since childhood or basically native. Although ESL class was pretty fun as we made jokes and explained them to the less fluent participants. By the way, this was at the top company of a multinational, multi-billion-dollar conglomerate who is large enough that I can confidently say that you own multiple of our products in your car and home, irrespective of what continent you live on. Story 37. In middle school, our pants had to be khaki or black, but they couldn't have the fifth little coin pocket that is on some or most pants. I was a straight A student and had to miss class because of this and was threatened to be sent home. Also, in middle school, there was a period where we had to go to the office and ask the principal if we could use the restroom in a school of 1,000 kids. My dad called the principal and told her, among other things, I'm sure, that she had to call him every time she wanted to use the restroom. I was excused from this policy and ended shortly after. Story 38. I used to work in a call center. They banned toilet breaks outside of your allotted break time, which I am sure was breaking some sort of health and safety rule. If you needed to go, you had to get the approval of two managers who were never around anyway. Now, I witnessed a pregnant lady having to walk around trying to find managers to ask and managers deciding whether they would allow her to go. One time I had a stomach illness and ran to the toilet twice to retch. When I got challenged, I explained and snapped, "Oh, would you prefer me to retch here?" So they brought a bin over, put it next to my desk, told me to use it. I left not long after that. Story 39. In the break for my school, they had a stupid, ridiculous stoplight that would let out a horn call halfway into the break, which meant everyone had to go outside for the rest of the break. It was to control the noise or something, but it was really ridiculous. That school was really like a prison, and that seemed to only reinforce the fact everything was bland and gray colored. There was almost no color or life to the place. The yard had gates and even cameras for whatever reason. Seriously, this wasn't even a school with troubled students or anything, just a normal, ridiculous school. It had a massive entrance for the teachers as well, and to the side, behind yet more steel gates and behind tons of bicycles, was a much smaller entrance for all the students, which of course there were far more of. To even further reinforce the fact that it was like a prison, the yard, or whatever you call it, square, you were forced to go out to for half of the break, also had a moat to protect against students leaving, if they, for some reason, felt like they wanted to, besides the fences, of course. Story 40. High school enforcing racial equality. Now, my school is about 600 students, 595 of them white probably, like with 2 or 3 Asian and black kids. One of the varsity football players blew his brains out one night very unexpectedly. Good-looking, upbeat kid, no one saw it coming at all, leaving much of the popular kids devastated. The crying didn't stop for a week in the halls. At a candlelight vigil held in his parking space, seniors could pay for a designated spot. This ridiculous black kid rolled up and started talking trash at the vigil and being a major disruption. Naturally, he was asked to leave, got in a tussle with one of the white kids, etc. And before we knew it, our 98% white school was now the most racist institution in the state. The family of the black kid was already marching hard with a discrimination lawsuit. I remember there was some other thing that happened between a black and white student that added to the fire at the worst possible time. Diversity pep rallies, diversity flag monuments, 6 flags of different colors in a circle, diversity t-shirts handed out to every student. The whole experience actually made me a bit of a racist because don't talk to the black kids, their parents might make this worse. Good job, school. Good job. Story 41. My school has a system called sweep. So basically, if you were even 1 minute late to your first class, you were sent to a room where you had to stand for an hour and just stare at a wall. It's meant to prevent kids from being late to class, so instead of missing the first 5 minutes of class, which was usually just kids mulling around talking, you had to miss a whole hour where you couldn't make up the work you were forced to miss. Also, if you were late to school, you had to bring your parents in to sign you in. Mind you, this isn't high school where most kids drove to school and their parents were off to work. If the parents didn't show up, you were swept and got ISS, in-school suspension. Story 42. I used to work as an electronics technician for a big oil company and they took safety pretty seriously, or more accurately, they took safety rules seriously, whether or not those rules made any sense. When they introduced a new safety policy manual, I noticed that one of the things that was forbidden was welding while wearing contact lenses. They said that's because some types of welding produce little bursts of microwaves that dry up the moisture in your eyes and bond the lenses to your corneas, which will pop right off when you try and remove the lenses. They even cited several cases. The thing is, I was really into studying urban legends at the time and recognized this as a popular urban legend. The entire notion is ridiculous. No such effect occurs, and you can no more pop off your cornea when removing a contact lens than you can pop off your head when removing a tight hat. So I told the head of the safety department that and provided her with ample documentation that it was ridiculous. She told me, well, we have to enforce it anyway. Story 43. The policy is still in effect at my school. All doors lock after 8:40 a.m. except for the main doors. This is a problem because my school is very overcrowded. We had to remove a room specially made to be a weight room in order to put 2 classrooms in it. We also turned a storage room into a split weight room/classroom, so everybody has to cram through one doorway during lunch. On your way back, you have to walk all the way around the school just to go inside, despite passing at least 3 different sets of doors on your way. The reasoning for this? Security. Yes, apparently locking some doors will somehow keep out intruders. And trust me, anybody who wants to come into the school isn't going to be stopped after trying one door, especially when you can simply walk around to the main entrance. Story 44. When I was in high school, they decided that my junior year was the year they would crack down on people being late to class. So they had every teacher in the school lock their doors at the start of every period. Security would then conduct hall sweeps. They would walk down every hall and take every kid wandering around to the cafeteria and give them a detention for that period. So instead of getting a tardy, it would give them an unexcused absence for the class. I don't know what the great idea was. Kids that didn't want to go to class just got caught, went to the detention, and would draw or whatever. Then kids who were good students would get punished for being a minute late. Well, if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.